Hallelujah. Holy shit. Where's the Tylenol? In a game that certainly will be remembered for quite a long time. And I think a lot of it will be because a tremendous defensive effort. One guy in the OBR Slack channel banging the drum to stick with Joe Flacco. Yes, he's in the room. Yeah. You need this. Look, we don't know how many of these there's going to be this year, but in order to keep everybody on the same page, everybody sticking to detail, everybody working, everybody dialed in, kids bought in, you needed one of these. When I last spoke to you guys on Friday, I kind of antiquated it to those who wanted to be positive about this game. Hey, go to that 49er game in 23. You know, a game where nobody thought you had a chance. And I know Pete's talked about this, and I did mention it a couple of times this week. There's games like this that have been during the Stefanski regime, even in the Lester years. And sometimes the Browns have been on the wrong end of it. But you go out there and you play a team that essentially maybe you have no business staying in a game with. But today they did. And, you know, it's always that line, you know, eventually, you know, well, this today was, you know, the breaks didn't beat the boys. The boys, you stuck with it until 55 minutes left in the game. 55 minutes of game time had gone by. And all of a sudden, you know, you kind of crack the glass just a tiny bit. You get the interception from Delpit. I still don't know where Jordan Love was throwing it to. You get the block field goal. I first thought it was Denzel Ward, who was pretty much clean off the end, but just missed by a hair. Shelby Harris gets it. The way the angle was, you knew, you know, you weren't positive it was Newsome, but you saw there was a defensive back headed right towards it. It's on it. You know, they get some yardage. They're bantering about how, on the commentary, how they're going to get out of bounds. Well, think about that. Throw it over the middle like they did in Njoku. Like it. Let's give Schmidt a shot. And for a kid who 2 weeks ago, nobody ever wanted to see again, and everybody wanted to run out of town, makes, you know, the kick of his life and just adds to what is a promising group of young guys currently on this Cleveland Browns roster. The OBR Postgame Show, Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, Browns pull out a thriller, 13-10.
We came into the season saying the Browns were going to steal the Steelers' identity. This is what the Steelers would do. They would win a game, and you can't entirely explain how they did it because by all rights, the Browns in this case should have lost, and they didn't. A lot of that just comes down to guts and just playing. I mean, in that sense, it's sort of like 2023 was, where they just play harder and longer than everybody else did and sort of win. The offense was god-awful for – I mean, it was never not bad other than a couple Quinshon Judkins runs and then the very last play, which was picture perfect. Other than that, it was terrible. You got the big play from Andre Schmidt. You got the big block from Shelby Harris. It was enough, and it's a program-affirming win. The Browns needed it. You know, given the amount of emotion and everything else they poured into it, it would have been heartbreaking to lose the way they did. Even though everybody seemed to expect that was going to happen. And they pulled it out, and now, you know, they feel better, at least some proof of concept that this can work. And they got some really good stuff out of it. Even as bad as the offense was, your running back's pretty good. Quinshon Judkins can play, and he brings a whole new element. Now, there's a whole lot of other things that aren't working and need to be fixed, and I think those changes are fast approaching. But, yeah, I mean, the defense continues to be terrific. Even if the Browns lost that game, I think they've got their slack corner. I think Myles Harden is going to continue to get opportunities to be that guy. I'm not going to beat him up for getting called for basically face guarding. Tough spot for him. He did the best he could, and he got called for it. The Packers got called for about 17 pass interference penalties. You know, if I'm going to look at other things that were somewhat positive offensively, Cedric Tillman played well. He caught the ball and had a couple nice plays. Other than the OPI thing, which is I frankly don't even think he needed it, but he also drew a number of penalties, and the one penalty he drew that set up the touchdown to Judkins, I don't know how the hell that play was going to win, like do anything positively, and yet the Packers still felt like to do anything really good. I thought it was a dead play. So we can get into it, but I think there's going to be things that are changing in a hurry on that side of the ball anyway.
So Buck,
it's coming.
We've had these conversations. We've had these conversations a ton, and a bunch of us here at the OBR. And, I think a lot of us, we are the belief of, we don't disagree with you. We don't. Now, honestly, because even if you look at what Flacco's giving you right now, if you got that out of Dylan Gabriel, you'd say, you want to know what? I'll take it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a rookie as opposed to the veteran. But Pete stance and kind of what it's been is, and look, this Green Bay Packer defense and this defensive line and this pass rush has been a lot better than it looked today. And that's certainly a conversation to have when the majority of this game was played by offensive tackle 3 and offensive tackle 4. So that's certainly a conversation we're going to get to here. Yeah, probably 3.5, 4.5.
Well, I mean, the reality is, look, let's just get into it. Today, or I should say Tuesday, the Browns made a couple moves that sort of had me raising an eyebrow. They released 4 guys from the practice squad, and that's not in itself all that big of a deal. They released Logan Brown, an undrafted rookie offensive tackle out of Kansas, which I think is interesting. That part is normal. The Browns churn their practice squad quite a bit, and they'll even bring some of these guys back over and over the course of the season. What stuck out to me was who they signed. They signed Jordan Miles, and former Raven Tyree Phillips to the practice squad.
Tackle.
Both are tackles. Jordan Miles has 5 years in the league. Tyree Phillips has 4. I don't think these guys were brought in for development purposes. I think these guys were brought in to prep to play, and sooner than later. That made me initially think, in addition to the comments Kevin Stefanski made, I'm more worried about the elbow of the right tackle, Jack Conklin, than they think he's further away than they'd like. That in itself wasn't all that. It was enough to raise an eyebrow, but didn't sort of, to me, sound the alarm. The second I saw Cornelius Lucas warming up at left tackle, DeJuan Jones warming up at right tackle, that to me was the alarm. They are trying to get this thing to work. DeJuan Jones playing at right tackle is panic. It's not that to me says, and they may disagree, that says this is not working at left tackle, and we're not getting what we need to out of left tackle, and we're trying him at right tackle in hopes that provides some familiarity. Unfortunately, Javon Bullard goes low in a play that I think should have been flagged. Takes DeJuan Jones' knee out. All we got, he walked off the field. All we got is that there's going to be an MRI. So who knows? That could be bad. I mean, again, he's had surgically repaired twice. I think it's the same leg. So that is a terrifying situation. And if you were just to get Jack Conklin back this coming week, okay, so be it. But if you're not sure, or you think this could be a longer-term thing, KT Leviston is not the answer. KT Leviston was a guy they brought in, and I've had people argue with me that he's like the future starter at something. That future is a long way away. He's an interesting run blocker. He cannot pass protect to save his life right now. He was late to see things. He was late to get to places he needed to be in pass protection, and it was a mess. So if you're saying to me they need to put Dylan Gabriel in, that is where I sit here and go, I think this is why they're not going to put Dylan Gabriel in, because KT Leviston was real bad. And Cornelius Lucas had his own problems with Micah Parsons. In the game, they sort of evened out a little bit, but they still had issues up front. So I think the Browns are going to try as much as they can to, one, get Jack Conklin healthy, hope for the best with DeJuan Jones, but realistically, they're likely trying to get these other guys ready to go. They may have to, I don't know if they've even considered Tevin Jenkins as a tackle at all, or if he's purely a guard, though he has played tackle in the past. But they are for a team that is remarkably healthy otherwise, all of their injuries are at one position. And it's really limiting what they can do. They are run blocking better. It's still not great, but it's certainly giving them some breathing room at points. But I don't disagree. Joe Flacco, other than his value in being able to line guys up, which was critical in this game in multiple occasions where he's trying to get guys on the line of scrimmage where they needed to be, or move them to the appropriate place to make sure they didn't get called for penalties, because he's managing his children out there oftentimes with the amount of rookies they're playing. That's the other part where I think Joe Flacco's status and his experience pays off. But there was one play, I think the Browns might have had a touchdown, where he missed an open cross over the course of the field,
flicker, right?
Into the screen.
The flea flicker.
Yes, the flea flicker, wide open over the middle field. I think it had one guy to beat, and he just missed it. And there were too many of those plays where Joe Flacco just missed it. There were times where I thought he just looked wildly uncomfortable, and a lot of that comes from the offensive line. And those things I think are inextricably tied together. So I think the clock is started. I think the win buys them some time. I think the win allows them to basically comfortably say that we're going to go Joe Flacco to Detroit. But I think the Browns understand where this thing is headed, and now it's trying to, one, see if they can get the offensive line a little bit more stable, and maybe that helps Joe Flacco play better, which would be nice. But if not, the offensive line gets stable enough that Dillon Gabriel can step in and play, because you can't go through 3 quarters and score 0 points. And I think they only got past the 50th one time right before the half, where he threw with all due respect to Moose Johnson, I think his analysis was wildly off on this idea that they should punt. They did exactly what they should have done, which is throw the Hail Mary or whatever you want to call that. Whether Joe Flacco's arm was impacted by a hit he took earlier and the ball didn't go where it was supposed to or whatever, ended up short, but that was the shot they should take. Either way, it's coming. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take and how long they can delay this thing, and the win helps.
We all get wrapped up into this team, and probably more than we should for our mental health and sanity. So when you get a game like today, which is, basically, the classic underachiever win, get up every day, go to work, pay your bills, all of this stuff. And, sometimes just doing the right thing doesn't seem to get much reward. But the stick-to-itiveness, which, again, doesn't really amount to a whole bunch of anything at the end of it. You just keep plugging away. Plugging away. But you get this moment. And I'll be honest, I'm surprised. I haven't seen much of it on social media yet, that the Browns should be 2-1. We'll let that slide. But there's a vision here, about making this thing sustainable for the future. The biggest part of that and what is needed certainly is not here currently. So I think because there is no dive of the future under center right now, I think everybody just wants to see the next man in line. And I'll admit I'm guilty of it. And
yes,
part of it
are.
is but I just think that if you can do these same types of things with Dillon Gabriel, and you certainly could. And, I saw somebody ask, look, Dillon's intelligent enough that I'm sure everybody would be lined up where they needed to be. And you saw one right towards the end where Joe motioned to Cedric Tillman. It was 3 times.
It was a lot. I don't think Dillon Gabriel is necessarily capable of doing that. I think Dillon Gabriel has a lot on I think Dillon Gabriel has a lot on his plate already to then have to do these other things. Maybe a bit too far for him right now. I could be wrong, but he's got to worry about what the defense is doing. He can't be worried about what his own guys are doing. Joe Flacco has played long enough where he can do that. He can be dad on the field. And that's part of the reason I think he's playing. And that's also part of the reason I think they want to wait on Dillon Gabriel. They're playing a ton of rookies. And look, some of these guys are playing better. Isaiah Bond was better today. Got to make
Absolutely.
real plays. You're still getting to see Harold Fannin, Quinshon Judkins. These guys are becoming factors. There's a lot of young guys making plays, which is great, but young guys make rookie mistakes. And Carson Schlesinger and Mason Graham are these guys that we haven't seen them make many mistakes. The offensive guys are the ones sort of making them, and you don't always see them. And these are the things where Joe Flacco can sort of cover up some of these things. But if we suddenly get a bunch of, illegal formation penalties, then it becomes, well, the Browns are stupid because they're trying to, the coaching staff is failing them because these guys can't get lined up or all this other stuff. It's because they're playing children. Very talented children, but children. And this is sort of the weird balance that they're striking, where they have super young guys at skill positions for the most part, and a super old quarterback and a very, very old line, especially now with Cornelius Lucas out there. KT Levison is now in this game is the super young guy, but everybody else is 30 plus. It's a weird dynamic to work in that, but it's also going to sort of delay how fast you get a guy like a rookie on the field, because if you're suddenly with 5 rookies out there and it looks like a mess, where do you then go?
The one I'm talking about, and it was visibly audible, on the thing, because you heard Flacco once, you heard it, and each one, and it kind of, the dad and me, like you just couldn't touch me. I've touched you 3 times. You need the motion at the right. Let's go. Obviously, everything got set. Everything went well. Everything, it went off without a hitch. Quinshon Judkins, you can see it. The right amount of elusiveness, burst, and I see daylight, and now I'm going to pick it up and really pick him up and put him down. A lot of people talk about the 38-yard run, which was huge. It was about a 10 or 11-yard run the play before, and you see what drew the Browns to Quinshon Judkins. As far as getting involved in the passing game, that'll take time. Obviously, there was, I guess, the one, and it didn't really hurt things all too bad, where he kind of just didn't know who to hit or who to pick up in pass pro. But in that case, dude, just hit somebody. Just hit somebody in that case. And ideally, who you're going to hit is the guy coming directly over the center, shortest path to your quarterback. If you're going to make a mistake, on, over, inside out, that type of theory. But you see what is so special about him. You see what, has the Browns intrigued. And as we talk about this offensive line that was out there today, and keeping in mind it was the Green Bay Packers, it was a much better, improved effort today. And, and you see, if they can run the ball, at least they can, keep the game a little bit more in favor. And, they can kind of keep the defense, somewhat rested and, somewhat, at their best abilities. And, look, it's fun right now watching all of this youth. It really is. I mean, because look, you got 2 at running back. You've got a tight end. You got the wide receiver. We haven't seen the quarterbacks yet. You add in, Huntington being part of this. And the fact that, look, you again, the Quinshon Judkins touchdown, who's in the backfield? Aiden Huntington, Fannin, and Judkins. That's a money situation, a big-time play. Absolutely had to have the touchdown. And everybody in that backfield are kids, which is, hey, it's great. It really is, because, this team certainly needs a little, Ponce de Leon, fountain of youth to them. So that's what, kind of just makes this all exciting. The defense, and I'll be honest, if you look at this and look at the way the Browns defensive line played, you would have thought the Green Bay Packers were the one with the offensive line questions coming into this game. Not so much necessarily the Cleveland Browns. And, Malik Collins still going strong, a decade into the league. Mason Graham, it's coming on very, very quickly. Schlesinger, I don't even know where to go. And look, Jordan Love, who takes that hit? Why did you just let that linebacker tee off on you in that situation? You're out of the pocket. Literally, all you got to do is throw the ball to a little white line right next to you. Don't let Carson Schlesinger, and Schlesinger, because in a situation like that, you got to be careful. But, I mean, he let him lick him up, and Schlesinger had no problem with it. I agree Harden, if anything, yes, it was face guarding. Maybe there was a hold before that, but you just saw a different level of confidence where he just, it would almost seemed, with Cam Mitchell last week where he was initially beat, it was like, screw it. I'm burnt, and Harden, the effort, the play it to the whistle type of thing, and certainly added a little jolt today. I certainly almost had some heart palpitations when that last drive before the maybe Jacobs fumble, Devin Bush whole scenario where they basically ran 2 jet sweeps, which is normally the, jump out the window because now the Browns are screwed because they never defend him well. But they did in that instance. Young team, a lot of youth here. And again, this is something that keeps everybody in line and keeps the meetings flowing like they do. And, lets everybody know that, hey, there's a lot going on here. And look, maybe it is not going to be our year, but it doesn't mean we can't punch the clock each and every Sunday and still have a chance to compete and a decent possibility at, finding a way to win some games.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Packers tried to take advantage of what the Browns were doing on the defensive line, where Isaiah McGuire kept chasing the backside of run plays, and they did keeps, and then they tried jet sweeps. I'd love to know what the responsibility is there, because it seems like McGuire, after two of those, should be staying home and trying not to suck down, trying to dent or whatever he's trying to do there, or just pursue backside. Because at some point, like, if you just stay home, you're going to, and they keep one of those, you're just going to get to deck the quarterback. But Malik Collins has been the interior pressure in general has been life-changing for Myles Garrett. He has to work so much less hard to get where he needs to go because the quarterback can't step up in the pocket. Malik Collins and Mason Graham executed 2 different twists that led to sacks from Malik Collins. Aiden Huntington got half a sack, I think, with Myles Garrett. Mason Graham looks tremendous in what he's doing. Malik Collins is just half a step faster in so many ways and has been a perfect fit for what the Browns want to do. Carson Schwarzenegger seemingly finally made a mistake, if you want to call it that, on the goal line where the tight end just sort of stopped and Schwarzenegger was sort of kept going. But he just continues to be really impressive. And obviously he loses a sack to 12 men on the field and then gets it back later. But the front is incredible in what they're able to do with a few mistakes here and there that you can sort of live with given what they're able to do. The secondary has, it's put on an island, so you're eventually going to give up some plays. But I like the way they compete. Grant Delpit has been great these last 2 games. Obviously came up big with the pick that you needed to have. I thought Ronnie Hickman was a much better football player today. Just in terms of, it seems like Jordan Love refused to really test that area of the field. But Tucker Kraft didn't do much. And obviously, I know he was sort of battling an injury. There wasn't a receiver that really beat up the Browns. I mean, people kept complaining, during the like our subscriber thread that like so and so's like ripping off all these plays on the Browns. You look, they have like 20 yards. That's how hard the Browns make teams work. That like when guys get 15 yards, it feels like they're getting beat. And some of that's just because the offense is so inept that it's making the defense work so hard. But anyway, I will get to Bucks thing. Look, I understand why we want to see Dillon Gabriel. And I don't think, one, there is a piece of this that's Dillon Gabriel. Where is he in his development? Where is he in relative to how the Browns feel comfortable in utilizing him? And the answer to that might be they may feel great about him. But even if they do, it comes down to everybody else. And if the line can't block, then you just put a kid out there who's now getting beaten up and everybody's just going to assume he's terrible. And that does him no good. Like, in that respect, Joe Flacco, and hopefully his kids aren't watching, is disposable. Like, in that sense, like, if Joe Flacco gets beat up and sort of ruined at 40, nobody's going to shed a tear for it and go, oh man, this is bad. Whereas if Dillon Gabriel goes out there and somebody like KT Leviston throws a lookout block and he gets absolutely decked and taken out of a game, people are going to be unhappy about that. And they're going to be mad that the Browns put him in a position to get beat like that. Beyond what everybody else is doing rookie-wise in terms of the skill position. So there are more things to this. And yes, he's 25. He had all this experience in college. I get that. The NFL is a different animal. And even you do need to sort of be careful with these guys, and you can ruin guys by putting them in too early. Or the alternative is, even if Dillon Gabriel can play, he looks so bad because the help around him is so bad that we get a bad look at him. And then the immediate reaction was, okay, screw it, throw in Shador. And then we're October, and everybody's going to be, well, let's put in Deshaun Watson. And I don't want to have that conversation. The Browns certainly don't want to have that conversation. They want to have a plan. And get this. And the other part about this is, like, when the Browns make the decision to go with Dillon Gabriel, I do not want it to happen during a game. I want them to say, we are going to go to Dillon Gabriel. We are going to give him all the reps. We are going to give him a fully formed game plan, as opposed to, if injury happens, that's the deal where you sort of have to roll with it. Okay. But other than that, if we are making a conscious choice to go to Dillon Gabriel, put him in the best position to succeed, because, one, if you believe in him at all, that should be the minimum. But two, it's for the other 52 guys and practice squad guys on the rest of this team. Put them in the best position to succeed, and it's not just randomly throwing the kid out there. So let them do it. I get the frustration. The offense is terrible, and Joe Flacco has to play better if he's going to keep playing, because, as I said before, the clock is on him, and everybody's going to sit there and look at it. And apparently the grace period for nostalgia is exactly 3 quarters, because 3 quarters is all he got before the 3 bad quarters against the Ravens was all he got before people were ready to get the hook out and get rid of him. 2023 was gone. We were done. Put him in the dumpster. Done. They won the game. So they're going to roll with him. I have no problem with that, but I'm hoping, and we'll find out if we learn over the course of this, that maybe they're starting to get Dillon Gabriel some reps with the ones to try to start getting him in position to get ready. But it's not just about the quarterback. It's about the 53 guys, and they have to take that part seriously.
And look, the excitement to see something else, especially when, and this was always the thing, and this was the offseason going into 24 when all the talk about, are you bringing Joe back or you're not? It's going to be damn near impossible to ever recreate that end of the regular season of 2023 with Joe Flacco. It's going to be damn near impossible. And most of the time, in a situation like that, where you rekindle a relationship, maybe you find out why that relationship didn't sustain anyway. And, with Joe coming back here at this point being 40, and look, there are certainly physical limitations. There's no questions about it. And, for a guy who was never considered, mobile, but was mobile enough to get the job done at 40 years old now, yeah, I mean, those limitations are a lot more. And it's certainly at times, because you see him, roll out and it's like, all right, well, he broke away and, maybe he can make something happen. But, by the time he gets to, the ability to have the throw, the coverage and the receive, it's just moving faster than he is. So the lanes necessarily aren't there. But look, I'm with you. Seeing, and thanks again, Buck. Seeing Gabriel at this point seems, like something you want to see. But in the same respect, this team should be 2-1. So the plan of playing Joe is not terrible. It's not, because technically it should have warranted this team to being 2-1 at this point, which would be absolutely bananas considering the fact that everybody just wanted to spend how much time once we first got our hands on the schedule about how difficult these first 6 weeks were.
Correct.
Now, the Packers themselves, you can understand, this is literally, you just beat a team that if they don't make the NFC Championship game, now their season will be viewed as a failure.
Also true.
That is literally where it went for Green Bay. They went from contenders to NFC favorite. There's no way around it. That is what the Micah Parsons move did for them. And I'll be honest, it's probably good you got him today, because whoever they're playing the next few weeks, now that they kind of maybe, kind of got, picked on its hat and kind of, basically I caught, with their slip, see where the Green Bay Packers team goes, certainly without question, because, this was something to walk away with. And again, I'll equate it to that 2023 victory over the San Francisco 49ers. Of course, Moody missed the kick, all that.
Even the Ravens last year, they beat the
Yep.
Ravens last year when they were viewed as the best team in the league. They beat the 49ers when they were viewed as the best team in the league. The Browns have this weird habit of taking out what many view as the best team in the league when everybody assumes they have no shot. They just come up big.
And, for this team overall, and look, I mean, you got to mention Schmidt. You just absolutely have to, because you go from where it was 2 weeks ago. Here was this kid, first opportunity in the league. Then all of a sudden, everything goes south within that same game. Kind of gets back on the horse last week. Nobody notices, of course, because the Browns get rolled. We find out, I guess it was Friday, that maybe something went on with his calf during Friday's walkthrough. Got to send him for an MRI. Everybody's waiting, like, are the Browns working at kickers? Everyone's waiting. Is there somebody with a kicker sighting in a nearby Chipotle? Who is actually going to be kicking the ball for the Browns on Sunday? We find out on Saturday, no, it's all right. Everything's good. He's good to go, which, for me figured, all right, well, let's dig a ditch because this will be the last we ever see with Andre Schmidt, because the first time he goes to kick a ball on Sunday, his leg's just going to fall off his body, because that's usually the way it goes here for Cleveland. But goes out there today, makes the kicks in front of him, the wild sequence at the end, and here you go, kid. And it wasn't certainly the kick that he missed against Cincinnati. It was 55 to become, a little bit of Cleveland folklore. Crushed it, had room to spare, dead center. And, that is what makes this fan base fun, because as much as you guys, you come out, the torch wielding villagers. Oh, wait, he made it? Here, toss him aside. Let's put him on our shoulders and we'll carry him down Main Street. But, and look, there's a lot of youth here anyway. So, and Pete, this is kind of what we said last week. So why not run with a little youth at the kicker and give him a chance to maybe get himself established? But, for a kid that, 2 weeks ago at this same exact time probably felt like, he wanted to dig a hole and crawl into it. I'm assuming tonight, wherever he goes, I'm assuming the cocktails will be free. I'm assuming the meal will be comped. And, the young man gets to feel like he's part of something. And, again, for all these kids that are putting this in, and the Fannons and the Sampsons and the Judkins and the Huntingtons and the Grahams and even McAllister, who wears white cleats when you're wearing an all brown uniform? McAllister, you should have gotten a 15-yard penalty for that and that alone. And Swessinger and all this, and Bond and all these, you feel like you're part of something here. Look, everybody knows this is Miles' show. We all know, and all these conversations of the Browns may need 5 starters on the offensive line next year. Yeah, I would say 5 is a pretty legit number now. Dwan, it's not going great on the left side, and the thing is, if this, there's anything with the knee again, now you just, you're worried about him. Big man, the stress on the body, all of this stuff. I do have one question, Pete. Like Mike Hall, obviously, your relationship with him, a guy I absolutely had penciled in to be that second round selection for them. It's going to be a nice thing to rotate. Like, they don't even have Mike Hall yet. Meanwhile, and you have basically everybody on that defensive line finding a way to contribute, and you still got this second round piece in only his second year that you get to add to this.
I mean, the bottom line is the Browns guys that are out there putting pressure on him because they are producing. And ultimately, this is this situation where you're waiting for him to come save the day. I mean, obviously, they want him to come in and play well and add to what they're doing. But like Shelby Harris was fantastic in this game. Obviously, he had the block, and that's seemingly where the reps would come from. Be Shelby Harris being inactive, because they're not going to take out Aiden Huntington. He's not going to sit down. He does too many things for them. So you've got Mason Graham is a rookie. Aiden Huntington is a rookie. Those guys are doing their job and contributing and growing. You're not going to shut down Malik Collins. So Shelby Harris is the natural guy, and Shelby Harris balled out and made the big play in this one. So that part is key. And yeah, they need to get him back and get him going. And that can be one more big piece, and suddenly something Jim Schwartz certainly wants to be a focal point on this defensive line. I mean, the future is Graham, Hall, ideally, and then Huntington and McGuire and all these other guys. So they've got what seems like wave after wave of guy that seems to be able to produce, and it's making Myles Garrett's life easier because we are not sitting there waiting for Myles Garrett to save the day, which is important. The Browns have other guys that can make plays. Like this is one of the big defenses, and we had this a little bit in 2023. But even then, he was the defensive player of the year, and he, and I will go down saying he should have been MVP for that year, given what we know now.
No doubt.
But now he's playing well. I mean, I don't know how they actually credited it, but I assume he's going to be at 4.5 sacks for the year, and he's playing at a really high level. And yet, it doesn't feel like he is such the overwhelming presence, not because he's not playing well, not because he's not an impactful player, but because so many other guys are doing big things for this team. Malik Collins is absolutely dominating. He is balling these last 2 weeks. Mason Graham looks impressive. Isaiah McGuire had the big game against the Bengals, hasn't been as good since. Alex Wright got his first big play of the season with the sack he had today. Carson Schlesinger has been a revelation. Devin Bush has been good. Devin Bush, if the Browns lose this game, any number of people are going to sit there going, well, the Browns punched the ball out and they should have gotten that fumble, late in the game, that potentially would have been their second turnover. And obviously one of the reasons they won this game is because they won the turnover battle. But they were at least doing the things that they needed to do to try to get the ball out and do these things that they haven't really had much success with. Obviously last week, Cam Mitchell was able to punch a ball out there. They didn't get it. They're doing things that are doing better. Grant Delwood's playing well. Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. I thought Greg Newsome again played well.
2 weeks in a row.
So I continue to be heartened by what I'm seeing there, and it's young players stepping up and adding to it. If Miles Harden can lock down that spot, great. You had Dom Jones come in when Greg Newsome came down with, I assume, cramps, and they never went after him. I was amazed that I thought they might go after him, and it ultimately didn't matter. And they tried to sort of run a sort of like a deep drag over the back of the end zone, and he covered it, which is the one they went to the backup tight end. I disagree with the notion they won't be able to keep Greg Newsome. They'll be fine.
Yeah, that's why I kind of brought this up.
Greg Newsome. That's not an issue. They have the money. They can easily pay him if they want to. It just comes down to, can Greg Newsome continue to play well consistently, and can do the Browns trust that that's going to be who he is from now on? Because right now it's the dream. You have Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome playing the exact type of man coverage you want them to be able to play in this defense. Can you find that third guy? Is it going to be Miles Harden? Is it somebody else? To be determined. But that is a conversation that's going to be had halfway through the season, maybe 3/4 of the way through the season. Isaiah McGuire is going to be in that conversation. Ronnie Hickman's going to be in that conversation. We'll see where that goes. But so much of this now becomes the defense is really good. Can they keep it up? We'll see. Where does the offense go from here? The answer to that seemingly is Quinshon Judkins. Quinshon Judkins had 94 yards rushing. Could have had, it may have gotten 100 if they went to overtime and gotten another possession. Played super well. Even when he had the 38-yard run, for whatever reason, to me in that moment, yet they absolutely do have the money. Stop it.
You need to Keith, read some Jack Duffin.
In that moment, the field felt 150 yards long because Quinshon Judkins tears off a 10-yard run first, or 10 or 11-yard run. Then it goes to 38, and it still feels like they had 75 more yards to go. It was like Tecmo Bowl's old thing that came out like a roll of old camera film. It just kept going and going and going. That was insane, but fortunately they were able to do it. But he's the future of this thing, and the present, really. If they can get him going, it should open up some things with play action. It should open up some things because teams are going to have to respect that. It may open up some plays down the field. The problem the Browns are running into, and what we saw, is teams are saying you're not going to beat us deep, and you're going to have to run 10 to 12 to 15 play drives and stick with it if you are going to win, to score points. And to this point, the Browns have proven that it's a great bet to bet against them on that they can't do it. And that's why the Packers got their 2 scores. They literally grinded down the field the entire way. They were averaging like 3 point something yards per play, and they just found a way to grind until they eventually got there and scored. That is a credit to the Packers. They have a lot of playmakers. That is where the Browns need to get to ultimately. But for now, they've got to find more explosive. Quinshon Judkins was the source of explosive plays in this game. He obviously had the 2 on that drive that led to the touchdown, led to the field goal before the touchdown, was able to get in the end zone. That is where the offense is going to come from, and they need to continue to build on that and continue to find the ways to make that thing work. If they can go there, they can hopefully build this thing out. And the thing that nobody wants to hear is if you get into the whole Bill Belichick-ism of the first 4 weeks of the season are really sort of the real preseason and figuring out who you are. That, unfortunately, is what the Browns are doing in so many ways. Part of that is the combination of the very, very young players they are rolling out there, getting Quinshon Judkins back at an inopportune time relative to everything, and then figuring out what's not going to work. We found out that some of this stuff on the offensive line is not going to work. And I would argue, at least outside of game 1, Joe Flacco is not really working at this point. That one of these things are going to change quickly, or they're going to go with different personnel. But at least that's where we can see this thing. On the Andre Schmidt thing, the field goal he made, getting the extra point, I'm sure everybody was sitting there going, oh, God, please don't miss this. Fortunately, all of his kicks went right down the middle. No question on any of them. And look, the other thing that would have been entirely predictable, given what we've seen today, 5 kicks have been blocked so far, maybe even more since. Would it have shocked anyone if the Packers just turned around and blocked Schmidt's kick?
Right.
Going the other way. So, I mean, they got the protection they needed. Schmidt had a great kick. We'll see where it goes. But, to your point, it's one more rookie. It's one more rookie to help this thing. And no, a shaky offensive line doesn't beg for a mobile quarterback. A shaky offensive line begs for better offensive line play. It just that what you're doing then is living a lie. Yes, mobility can help, but it doesn't solve the problem if you get lookout blocks. Mobility is not a panacea for anything the Browns are doing. It is trying to hide an issue that's not going to resolve itself. They just need to find better offensive line play if they're going to turn it over to him. Because if they don't, he's going to get ruined, and you're going to hold it against him, and that's just how this thing ends up going. So that is where we sit now. 1-2, huge win for this thing. It doesn't get any easier. The Browns then, I'm very curious, honestly, to see this Packers or the Lions play the Ravens. To see where that goes, to see if we learn anything.
But you want to know what, though? It's not necessarily going to give us the truest of pictures, though, because Detroit outside on grass is a lot different than Detroit in Detroit. So there is, some difference, certainly to that. But, hey, Detroit goes in there, wins, all of a sudden maybe they're a little, laid back and, not expecting things, of course. Here's
I don't buy any of that crap. But the bottom line is, look, as much as this whole team is extremely frustrating, I enjoyed the crap out of watching this defense match up against this Packers offense, because the Packers offense has so many different weapons, and they didn't even have them all. They're obviously missing a couple of receivers with injuries. Tucker Kraft is a little bit dinged up.
Watson, Reed, yep.
But they have running backs that can run the ball. They have receivers that can make plays. They have a ton of guys there. They are what the Browns hope to become. The Detroit Lions offer many of the similarities. I'm very curious to see if Jared Goff can deal with this much pressure. One, if the Browns can get the pressure on him and create it, because in the past, Jared Goff has not done well with a ton of pressure in his face. If they can, one, generate that much pressure, and then two, what happens? Finally, pressure broke pipes in this game, and the Browns caused a turnover, getting Grant Delpit. Hopefully that is something that can be carried forth into Detroit and some of these other teams. But that's going to be another fun matchup. Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the amount of different players, two different running backs that can make plays. Their tight ends are good. It's going to be another tough test for them. But the Browns defense arguably had their best day of the year in this one. And I'm curious to see if they can continue building on it while hopefully continuing to find a little bit of an answer on offense. Quinshon Judkins seems to be that answer. Now, what else can you do with it? Can Isaiah Bond take another step? Can we get more out of some of these other receivers and weapons? David Njoku came up with some big plays, but I want to see more consistently. Jerry Jeudy more consistently. Those are the things that they have talented guys. They've just got to get more out of these people.
To Keith's point earlier, Keith, the thing is I think Greg Newsome appreciates this defense and appreciates playing for Jim Schwartz and knows that he looks like the best version of himself. Trust me, the finances are certainly there. You're about to lose your entire offensive line. That's money right there. Here's one. Of course, but here's a fun one right off the bat. Cleveland Browns defense through 3 weeks against Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. 48 carries, 96 yards.
Josh Jacobs was far and away the best. Like Josh Jacobs actually made a couple plays. They killed Derrick Henry. And that's the other
that's 2 yards per carry.
Derrick Henry's game was so bad. I am genuinely curious to see how he bounces back. I was genuinely wondering coming out of that game, is it over? And I'm almost certainly going to be proven dead wrong, and he's going to run for like 150 yards. But
whenever it is, though, he will be the guy. He will be the guy where it's over in a 2-game stretch. It will be the tank is just going to go empty, and you can't lose weight. There's nothing that's going to revive a second version of Derrick Henry. I think the second version of Derrick Henry was going to Baltimore, where he wasn't the key. Lamar was the key. But no, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs through 3 games. Cleveland Browns, 48 carries, 96 yards. That's 2 top.
Well, and this was the game
first 3 opponents, top running backs.
This was the game where it sort of proved out how it's supposed to go. I have to say the Bengals game did too. The Ravens game was the one where you sit there and go, wait a minute. They absolutely shut down the running game. How are they still getting? How is this happening? Sort of at the end of the game, this is how it's supposed to go. This is why you put so much emphasis on winning line of scrimmage and stopping the running game, because what it allows you to do with your defense, putting the opponent in predictable situations is such a huge advantage for you, and that it allows somebody like Grant Delpit to be in a position to make a play like he does, to be able to sort of prime for the passing game. So. That's what makes that Ravens game so frustrating from a defensive standpoint. They have Lamar Jackson was just phenomenal in terms of the passing game. But if this is who the Browns are, they're going to be in these games. And it's just a question of, can they tinker enough to find more offense? Eventually, that's probably going to be Dylan Gabriel. But right now, according to Kevin Stefanski, it's going to remain Joe Flacco. I understand it, especially as long as they can sort of get some way, somehow to find answers on the offensive line. I don't expect miracles. I just want 5 guys who look like they're doing the same thing at the same time.
Look, if you remember in 2023,
it was worse.
Who were your tackles down the stretch? Jerron Christian at left tackle and James Hudson.
That's right.
On the right side. And that Baltimore game, James Hudson was just mauling people as Jerome Ford, and the Browns just ran right. They basically told Baltimore, we're running right until you stop it. So, it doesn't always, the individual doesn't necessarily always matter when you equate them into the totality of the offensive line. And, can you do Keith, the Browns will always have money. Don't worry about that. It's like your parents. When they tell you we got it taken care of, trust me, they got it taken care of.
You're worried about second contracts for the rookie class is 4 years away.
Yes.
And they're not going to rush to extend Martin Emerson. He's got an Achilles injury. They have to find out if he's going to be able to, be a meaningful football player from this point forward. And that's unfortunately the reality of the situation. I suspect they will extend him in some form or fashion to keep him here another year to then form some sort of prove-it deal. But they can't.
Well, it'll be continue your treatment here, 1 year, $2 million incentives. Continue your rehabilitation here with us because he's not going to be ready. By March, he's not going to be good to go. So you want to stick on your rehab plan, team-friendly deal, if the Browns even do it.
And to the answer about Joel Bitonio ever kicking out the left tackle, no, it's over. Like from that standpoint, it's not that he can't do it. It's just that it's no point. He's a guard and he's playing at a really high level, which is insane. Like he's actually been playing really, really well.
But and the thing is we're getting
with the back and all.
Yes, and for Joel, it's it's just enough to make it to Sunday right now, playing the position he's played for almost all of his time here.
Guard, look, for the Browns, guard is more important than tackle. It continues to be more important than tackle because, again, it comes down to how are you going to run the ball. And the Browns have since Kevin Stefanski's been here, has prioritized guard over everything else. They're obviously going to have to replace a whole bunch of things, but no, Joe Bitonio left guard, how he did relative to, grading or anything, but he's been the number one guard in the league heading into this week. I don't know how long that's going to last, but he's actually played really well at guard. You're not going to mess with it. You're going to try to find a way to get the guys to sort of take their time getting around the tackles and work your way around that. Find a way to get as much strength as you can in the interior, pound the ball that way. That certainly favors Quinshon Judkins' strengths at this point. All of his runs that were effective in this game, right down the pike. So they're gonna try to do that as much as possible. And the other thing is like that's going to do as much as they can to sort of try to keep the feet clean of whoever's back there at quarterback. Whether that's been short quarterbacks, where that's been a super important thing, or Joe Flacco, where you're an old man and you don't want stuff by your feet and legs and everything else. That is always going to be the priority. So they're going to have to find solutions of some sort. I would put Tevin Jenkins out at tackle before I put Bitonio out there. But I'm curious to see the approach. Again, is it going to be, is Jack Conklin going to be back? Or are we going to be looking at Tyree Phillips getting reps or Jordan Miles or whatever? But that's sort of the question they're going to have to answer this week. But on that front, I think we're going to see changes sooner than later. Unfortunately, some of that's due to injury. We'll see what happens with DeJuan Jones and his knee. I don't expect we're going to get great news on that. But yeah, that's sort of where we're at. Cornelius Luke is actually fine.
Yes. And Pete, this actually goes back to when Jack first got here. Steve and I got a buddy named Steve Morton who does some really, really good work. And he's a really big Titans guy. And like he always said, like the years where Jack Conklin was all pro and Jack Conklin was just an absolute beast. Jack Conklin is a guy that kind of has to be as close to 100% healthy to be a star, because Jack Conklin has always kind of been a guy that's got really good technique, got good feet, kind of athletic, but not your typical mauler, bruising offensive lineman. So when Jack Conklin is dinged up, you're not usually getting the same version or even close to the same version of all pro Jack Conklin as, you are when, and look, and Jack's, I mean, I guarantee you if you sat John Conklin down and asked him to list you off of his injuries during his time in the NFL, he probably would not be able to recall them all. I mean, this poor guy has been through the ringer and back. And certainly we all know, and we're not naive to what's going to most likely happen this offseason. And there will be an extreme amount of work done. Maybe Luke Whippler gets a shot, Pete. Maybe he's the new move tight end that they can use as a red zone weapon.
Fascinating that was they attempted that. It would have been great if he caught a touchdown, but yeah, that was.
And the best thing is the way Joe threw it to him. Like, and I was like, oh, he's throwing. Oh no, he actually kind of gave him a fighter's chance to try to make something out of it. But even still, though, and now just not to harp on it, but that play right there, though, that's supposed to be one of those ones with most quarterbacks where maybe it turns into, I can take it with myself or I can throw it. With Joe, there is no take it myself. I got to throw it. I just don't have the foot speed, And, so you take the good with the bad. And look, again, I understand people thinking that there can be more from the quarterback position or a rookie, even though Dylan's older, who can maybe give you the same amount of play. I get it. And, Pete's basically out here basically telling you all, hey, let's not make sure we put this poor kid in a body bag before we even know whether or not he's fully entrenched in 100% of the offense.
For what it's worth, I would be very curious to see, and, this would be the things I would ask Kevin Stefanski and probably wouldn't get an answer. At what point, like, does Dylan Gabriel in the red zone, like in the goal line or the red zone, make sense? Because then you do get to sort of take advantage of his legs and sort of force an opponent to play 11 on 11 football. This is always the thing you don't like having with a statue quarterback. And fast forward, this is the thing I don't like about Garrett Nussmeier as a potential Browns quarterback. You can certainly succeed and win with a quarterback who plays where you're constantly playing 10 on 11. Obviously, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, those guys have all had a ton of success. It can be done. But I certainly value the ability to at least force teams to think about the possibility of playing an 11 on 11, but certainly in an element like down by the goal line, especially since Dylan Gabriel seems relatively comfortable taking a ball from under center. Those are things where I sit there and sort of wonder if those are the steps. Because, I mean, this was sort of the thing, in the draft process where I was a big Jalen Milroe guy. That would be a situation where I would absolutely want to use Jalen Milroe inside the 10-yard line and use, keep option and some of those other things just to force defenses to think about it. You can throw and do all those other things. But, that's part where I to be a fly on the wall and wonder if those are some of the conversations that are happening where you start to think, yes, Joe Flacco is our guy and we want to keep him going this way. But are there certain situations where Dylan Gabriel makes a ton of sense because he adds an extra element and forces the defense to prepare for it and gives you some extra things to do? I was a little surprised that, I should say, I was going to be curious to see if the Browns tried to use Harold Fannin on a direct snap situation down in the goal line, given how many times they were down there, to see if they were going to do that. Because Joe Flacco, God bless him, he has snuck and picked up a first down, but that's not really who he is at this point. Whereas Harold Fannin at this point, at least he's got some meat on him and will drive those legs forward and you can try to shove the pile. Those are some of the conversations where I wonder if we start seeing more of that stuff, because it at least forces the defense to do some more things, prepare for some more things, and gives your offense a little bit more juice and options in terms of how they want to attack.
Now, I just scrolling through here and seeing just some of the video from the Browns locker room today, and you just see it, and you see it from a guy like Joel Bitonio, you see a guy from like Denzel Ward, guys that have kind of been here and kind of been through a ton, and just the overall satisfaction from knowing what you're doing, and taking the coach speak, front office speak, and seeing it turn into something. Look, you went in there today against a team that nobody in the NFL thought you had any business even playing a game against. And you played to the best of your abilities on the defensive side of the ball. You kept in that game as long as you possibly could. And, hopefully this is the thing, and I'm not saying it's going to start, this tremendous run for this team. But you know what? For a guy like Quinshon Judkins, I'm saying the confidence level goes up a little bit. I had a couple of huge runs that, in essence, turned the landscape of this game. Isaiah Bond, look, not only was it the flea flicker, but it was the one where Joe missed him, where he was kind of sitting in the right spot in cover 2, where Joe should have hit him right in the chest. And, oh, well, you know what, Joe, and the announcer, oh, well, Joe, look, dude, Joe's 40 years old, bro. There ain't, he's playing with every type of receiver there is. That's on Joe Flacco to feather the ball over the underneath guy and under the backside guy, So Bond kind of, feeling his oats, finding it a little bit for himself. Fannin, I think it was kind of not given enough run that it should have, that he basically broke 3 tackles on that one reception. And it was just like the simplest spin move with the ball in his hand. And I think there were like 3 guys involved where one was like, oh, I think you got it. I think you got it. I think you got it. Oh, crap. None of us had him. But look, we all got to feel good about this team. And, it's terrible as week 1 felt. And last week, maybe it was a little different because, it is the Baltimore factor. We know it's difficult at times and But, today you get one that you never, ever saw coming. And, everybody gets to walk around a little higher and feel a little better about this team. And look, there's questions about what the future of this team is as far as the veterans. We know what the core of this team currently is. A lot of youth, and a lot of that youth is vastly, quickly jumping into more of what is the core or going to be soon to be the core of this team. So you take this one and, you absolutely enjoy it. And, Monday morning, everybody's going to roll out of bed a little easier as they go on about their week and go to work. You get a little peek at Detroit against Baltimore tomorrow night, finish the NFL slate here on Sunday. But, the Browns, in a game that none of us saw coming, went out there, gave it every single thing they had, and some things just absolutely broke right for them. And I don't think anybody thought it was going to, because I think everybody thought the only shot there was Devin Bush knocked it out of Josh Jacobs' hands. And I think we all kind of feel that maybe for the split second, maybe Devin Bush had more control over it. There's no way it was going to be overruled. And I think everybody that was going to be the ones, refs screwed us again. There was our chance. And even still on that kickoff, because Denzel Ward was so close. But even still, there was Shelby Harris, which tells you that none of these guys gave up on nothing. Every one of these guys went every second of that 60 minutes. And it turned into fruition. It turned into a victory. And, for a place that was packed with Green Bay fans, our Jacob Roche was there, had a nice video to share with us all of the field goal as well. Cleveland Browns are 1-2. They are 1-2. Yes, it's going to be Joe Flacco next week. And I'll be honest with you, if he was 0-3, I would have screamed from the top of the hills that it should have been Dylan Gabriel. But it's 1-2, technically should be 2-1. So the plan they are currently working with is working. Need anything before we go?
Program affirming win. For all the things you stated, it's super important that this group needs to experience success. The thing that I keep taking away from this, and this is what I thought was going to happen coming into the season, teams don't want to play the Browns. Your offense does not want to play the Cleveland Browns defense. It is a nightmare to play this group. Nobody wants to have to deal with this front. No one wants to have to deal with the front seven as a whole. They just keep coming. And at this point, we are now going into a situation where your quarterback has to worry about making it out. Your line has to worry about making it out. Beyond winning the there's this element of we have to win the football game, and the Browns are still probably going to lose more than they win, but they are going to take chunks out of opponents in the process, and teams are going to hate playing here, particularly playing in Cleveland. Hopefully, it wasn't great that there were that many Packers fans, but I get it. If this continues to be like this, then it's going to sort of restore that sort of pride in being home field and that vicious defense and just taking names. Because right now, Jordan Love, was pretty good when they did not have pressure, but they beat the crap out of him at points with pressure and some of the things they were able to do. That is not going to change. I think it's only going to get better as they get more comfortable because they have so many young players. So that's really been my biggest thing is, yes, I want to see this team win. I want to see this team start to figure some things out. Maybe that's starting to happen with the running game with Andre Schmidt and special teams playing better. Hopefully it doesn't revert. But the defense, nobody wants to face this group. And that's going to be a thing all year.
The thing is like the Browns defense right now for any one of these opposing offenses, it's kind of like you clicked a bad link in an email. They're like a virus right now, the Browns defense. They can kind of, expose some weaknesses in with your offense. And, the thing about it is it's not too difficult. They're going to rush the living hell out of your quarterback and basically play man to man. Even you saw today, the one where Golden off the goal line, it's because it kind of went zone. And Delpit kind of just had two guys shooting at him and was, do I take the tight end? Do I take the wide receiver? And, granted, we know how that drive turned out or whatever. But look, Browns 13-10 victory today. And, you just kind of keep the line moving. And you know what? When the week opens up again, there's going to be guys, everybody in every meeting room, team meetings, eyes open, focused, attention to detail, because what they're speaking, what they're preaching from the front office coaching staff down, it resonates when there is some success. And that's what the ultimate goal is. If you thought this year was the year, I think maybe you're kind of on an island alone on that one, but you're kind of laying the foundation about what this team is, going to be, at least for this year, and what they're striving to be 26, 27. And a lot of it checks out. I mean, you got players, young ones, damn good ones, young, producing everywhere. Fun product right now, even if it might not be the most overall successful season for the Cleveland Browns. It'll be coming flooded to you, obviously. The content, written content, of course, the streaming, OBR streaming network. A little more hitching your giddy up, of course, to write about something you feel a little bit more positive about. There's only so many ways you can put a shine on a turd at times, but you got to feel good about this product after today. And again, knowing that it could have easily, as it is 1-2, could have easily been 2-1. But baby steps, baby steps. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you head on over to, of course, the OBR.com for all the coverage over there. Check out that VIP package, the insider forums, ask the insiders, have it bundled with Paramount Plus and the OBR streaming network, beginning Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, and of course, around for post-game shows. Again, for Pete Smith, myself, we appreciate everybody. Everybody go have a nice meal, a couple cocktails. Browns win 13-10. Schmidt from 55 out with the game winner.